My name is Amani and I'm hosting you today, this afternoon. How was the last session? I want to hear from you what you heard from the panelists. I want to hear from you what's working today. What are some of the things you've heard about your business? What are some of the things you wish you knew or you'd like to hear as we talk about the mini barazas coming ahead? And also, I'll be telling you about day 2 after this session. I'd like to acknowledge our partners and our sponsors, and one of them is Facebook. Facebook is one of our grand partners. Thank you very much, Facebook, for being here with us and for partnering with this event. Jubilee Insurance, thank you so much again for partnering with us and being part of this event. Our other partners are on the side there. You can get to see them and interact with them. Now, this panel that we're about to start get into is about the policy makers and big tech. Philip did say that the world is flat. And when he said the world is flat, I asked myself, is it really? But it really is, because technology has made the world flat. And so when you talk about technology, then you have to think about people like Facebook. And Facebook will be presenting a survey for us today by Nanayaa Appenteng. Nanayaa serves as a public policy manager for campaigns and programs at Facebook, where she oversees research programs focused on economic impact and innovation across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. She is a bachelor's holder in economics from Mount Holyoke College and a master's of public affairs from CNCS Paul Paki. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Nanayaa. She takes us through this survey, and then after that, I will introduce the panel, and I'll introduce the moderator for the next panel. Nanayaa, take it away.
Thank you so much, Amali, and good afternoon. I hope you can all see my slides okay. Thank you. So as mentioned, I work on Facebook's public policy team as a campaigns and programs manager, where my work focuses on research programs on economic impact of digital tools and innovation across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. I'll be talking you through the research insights from the studies that we've supported in this area. Now, research shows that higher levels of digital adoption by SMEs are correlated with a higher rates of growth and employment creation. This is because digital tools lower barriers to entry and improve the efficiency of businesses. They've also been important to many SMBs during the COVID pandemic, and we've heard a number of stories of resilience and innovation from the businesses present today. These tools provided virtual access to markets, to customers, and resources, which helped businesses around the world as they adjusted, innovated, and in some cases pivoted. Now, an upcoming study by Genesis Analytics, an African economics consultancy, examines how the digital economy, as evidenced through the Facebook apps, creates value for SMBs that are operating in Africa. This study was commissioned by Facebook, and it will be published in mid-June via the Genesis Analytics website. But I'll be highlighting a number of the study's findings, given its relevance to today's discussions. The report asserts that there are at least 3 big opportunities and competitive advantages which will propel the continent forward. These include an extremely young population, the opportunity to bring more women into more formal economic activity, and the opportunity to diversify economies and take advantage of intra-Africa trade, realizing the benefits of the African Free Continental Trade Agreement. In the report, Genesis examined how these 3 opportunities are being enabled by the growth of Africa's digital economy. Their research draws on a survey of 4,020 SMBs who are defined as businesses with under 250 employees, and this was fielded between February and March of this year in 8 countries of focus. These countries include Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, the DRC, South Africa, Nigeria, and of course Kenya. A targeted sampling approach was used, focusing on business owners, senior managers, and solo entrepreneurs across 13 different industries. Now, just a few highlights from the survey. 73% of surveyed SMBs reported using social media, and 72% reported using the Facebook app specifically. Of surveyed SMBs that use the Facebook apps, 84% reported that the apps have been important in the growth of their business, and 77% reported that the business is stronger today because of the apps. And finally, 55% believe that the apps help them to start the business. Now let's take a closer look at how businesses use the Facebook apps to support their growth. As shown here, businesses at different stages of maturity have needs which are catered for by the various functions of the apps. This can range from creating a brand presence through a Facebook or Instagram page to communicating with customers and paid advertising. Now, surveyed SMBs ranked reaching new markets and customers, raising brand and product awareness, and communicating with customers as the leading benefits to using the apps. One business leader leveraging the benefits of the apps is Jackie Njeru, the owner of Lux Nail Parlor, a nail salon business which was founded in Nairobi in 2014. Using Facebook and Instagram, Jackie has grown the business and increased her customer acquisition to about 50 people daily. 70% of her customer conversion comes from people who found the business on Instagram or Facebook. Over the years, she's expanded her business from a small kiosk to a leading nail salon in Nairobi and has hired over 15 employees. During the pandemic, Jackie had to shut down her business for 3 months and downsize her staff. But throughout the lockdown, Jackie remained engaged with customers through WhatsApp and Instagram stories, sharing nail tips. Since reopening a year ago, the business has experienced a gradual growth and they have currently launched post-salon nail care products. She's also been able to hire more employees. Jackie is part of a burgeoning population of female entrepreneurs who are using the digital economy to start and grow a business. Strikingly, Africa is home to the highest share of women entrepreneurs globally and is also the only region where self-employment is more common than wage employment. But female-owned businesses in particular tend to be less profitable, earning 35% less on average than male-owned businesses in sub-Saharan Africa. Using Facebook tools to reach and engage with her customers and establish her brand's presence, Jackie was able to grow her business from a micro-enterprise to a small business. This graph here shows that digital tools are a step on the ladder for female entrepreneurs, but there is a real drop-off when it comes to female ownership rates and larger and generally more profitable businesses. Supporting businesses as they grow is important for realizing the opportunity of bringing more women into the formal economy and into more profitable economic activity. Now, digitally enabled SMBs can also provide gainful economic opportunities to Africa's youth. It's estimated that by 2025, almost 1/4 of the world's population younger than 24 will be from sub-Saharan Africa. A young Africa has the opportunity to reap the demographic dividend. However, this dividend can only accrue if there is gainful economic activity available to young people as they come of working age. Across all 8 countries surveyed, the study found that SMBs using the Facebook apps are more youth-friendly. In Kenya specifically, surveyed SMBs that reported using the apps reported on average having a higher proportion of employees under the age of 30, 56%, relative to non-users of the Facebook apps, which was at 46%. Now, this next graph shows that surveyed SMBs that report not using social media are more prevalent in traditional sectors of agriculture, mining, utilities, and construction. By contrast, surveyed SMBs that report using social media are concentrated in manufacturing, personal trade of goods and services, professional services, tourism, arts, and entertainment. But across all 8 countries, the services sector is among the top 3 sectors of surveyed SMBs. This is reflecting the significant digitalization potential of the services sector. As Genesis Analytics research suggests, digital and social media platforms such as the Facebook apps are playing an important role in the development of SMBs by cost-effectively addressing a number of the challenges SMBs in Africa face. They've also been important to many SMBs during the COVID pandemic, providing virtual access to markets, customers, resources, and business management tools. From May through October 2020, the Future of Business Survey, which is an ongoing data collection collaboration between Facebook, the OECD, and the World Bank, took a monthly pulse of how SMBs, defined in that study as those with fewer than 500 employees, navigated the COVID-19 pandemic. Through a series of 6 monthly surveys, the Global State of Small Business reports documented the experiences of more than 150,000 business leaders from over 50 countries, including Kenya. In the final survey wave, which was fielded in October of last year, small businesses in Kenya reported the following. 51% of operational SMBs on Facebook reported 25% or more of their sales were made digitally in that last month. 36% of operational SMBs on Facebook reported in October that the proportion of sales they made digitally had increased compared to before the pandemic. And finally, 65% of owners and managers of operational SMBs on Facebook reported that they felt optimistic about the future of their business. Now, this research highlights the important role that digital tools have and continue to play in supporting business resilience. Genesis Analytics research highlights a number of the ways in which the digital economy is creating opportunities for SMBs, and what this means for some of the competitive advantages that I highlighted earlier. Their research found that surveyed SMBs that use the Facebook apps were newer, with an average business age of 9 years compared to 12 years for non-users of social media, had a higher share of employees under the age of 30, as I noted for Kenya, tend to be more service-oriented, and were more optimistic about their business growth prospects. The survey has made clear that digital tools can be a powerful enabler of SMBs in realizing some of these headline opportunities around harnessing the continent's youth bulge, enabling greater economic inclusion in more formal economic activity, and taking advantage of more intra-Africa trade. But the prerequisite for this and greater realization of these opportunities is a positive environment for equitable digital access. As I mentioned, this report will be published in mid-June, and it will list a number of policy recommendations, but it's our opinion that both government regulators and private companies all have a role to play in creating this ideal business environment for SMEs. And I thank you very much for listening, and I welcome any questions in the chat function.
Much, Nanayaa, for that wonderful presentation. Thank you for the insights. We have a lot of people asking if this presentation can be made available. Is that a possibility?
The presentation contains details of research which will be published in mid-June, so I'll be sure to share the research with the participants once it's published.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Nanayaa. And now it's, and so if you have questions for her, you can throw them in the Q&A session and she'll be able to see them. But now it is my honor and privilege to invite Rosemary Amondi, who is the Regional Director of Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs. She's a strategic leader and a supply chain expert with over 15 years of experience as a lead consultant on high-impact trade and value chain-related projects. She has a wide range of expertise in strategic management, technology, advocacy, and trade facilitation. And prior to this network, which is in short called ANDE, as founder and CEO of Tracesoft, she led various trade and digitization initiatives across diverse sectors in Africa, including agriculture, manufacturing, and retail. She's also served on several high-performing boards, including more recently the board of Fair Trade Africa. She holds a BA in Gender and Development Studies from Kenyatta University and an advanced diploma in Strategic Management from Strathmore University. She is moderating this session, which includes Susan Njeru from Facebook, human being to moderate this panel, Rosemary Amondi. Karibu. You're muted, Rosemary.
Sorry, thank you so much, Amani, for that wonderful introduction. Good afternoon. Welcome to this session on policymakers, regulators, and big tech role in creating an ideal business environment for SMEs. So we've heard from the SMEs, we've heard from organizations that are doing a fantastic job at providing support services to SMEs. And now we want to shift gears and engage with policymakers and regulators. So as Amani has said, we're joined by Nanayaa Appenteng, who's just made a presentation on their recent research findings. We're also joined by Susan Njeru, who is the team lead stakeholder engagement at Kenya Revenue Authority in the Domestic Taxes Department. We're also joined by Mwende Njiraini, who is Manager, Innovation, Research and Development at the Communications Authority. Last but not least, we're also joined by Mary Ndegwa, who is the Head of Public Policy, East and Horn of Africa at Facebook. So I'll quickly turn to you first, Nanayaa, after that presentation on how social media is powering small and medium businesses in Africa. So I'd first like you to share, what you found surprising about that study, and just picking up from some of the highlights that you mentioned in terms of the characteristics of businesses that are engaging on your platform. So these are newer businesses driven by young people, mainly in the service sector. So following up on that, maybe also touch a little bit about the trends as you see them moving forward in terms of increasing this engagement, and perhaps what we should be looking forward to in terms of the key trends moving forward. So Nanayaa, please go ahead.
I think Nanayaa has dropped off. Maybe.
So as we try and get Nanayaa back on, I'll go to Susan. And so we've had, in Kenya, the SME profile, and this is picking up from the SME perception survey that we also had earlier. The SME profile comprises 98% of businesses, 30% unemployment, 30%, or rather contributes to 30% employment, and 30% contribution to the GDP. Susan, we hear so much about collections. So, things like the 1% digital tax. And sometimes it feels like the Revenue Authority does not want to see SMEs survive. It more or less feels like, it's killing the goose that's laying the egg. So could you please share with us some of the work that you're doing to support small and medium enterprises, and some of the biggest misconceptions that you feel we have about the Kenya Revenue Authority? Susan, karibu.
Asante sana, Rosemary. I think this is a great opportunity. KRA is always eager to engage with taxpayers, and particularly taxpayers who are gathered in a forum such as this, because it allows us to not just share information, but also to receive feedback regarding not just the perception, but also any compliance issues that taxpayers may have. So you've asked a question, which is that how is KRA supporting MSMEs? And I do want to mention, I was listening in on the previous session, and I do want to mention that KRA has actually done a lot to bring the MSME focus, the perspective, MSME perspective into focus. And one of those things actually is the introduction of an office that specifically deals with SMEs. That's the Taxpayer Services and MSMEs Division. And what that unit does is that we do capacity building. We capacity build held for MSMEs, which is training such as this. We even encourage MSMEs to get together, under associations, and to identify areas that they are experiencing challenges with and to approach KRA. The other thing is that Kinoti did mention that there are certain tax reliefs that were instituted by government to cushion Kenyans from the COVID-19 pandemic. I do want to mention that turnover tax, and turnover tax is a tax that is specifically targeted to SMEs. And what that means is that if you have a business whose turnover is between 1 million and 50 million, then turnover tax is specifically designed for you, for that kind of business. And the reason why we say that is because turnover tax is actually taxed at 1%, and it is 1% of gross sales. You don't deduct expenses, but it is also a final tax. I want you to think of turnover tax as an alternative to the annual regime. If you are an individual, you know that your year runs from January to December, your taxes are due in June. And so this is an alternative for businesses to that annual regime. You do file monthly, but it is actually an income tax. And the reason why we say it targets SMEs is because turnover tax does away with the need to keep complex business records. All you need to keep is credible records of your daily sales, because it is taxed on your turnover. You pay 1% of your turnover. And so you can even actually file. KRA has an app called the M-Service app. So you can actually file and pay turnover tax using your mobile phone device. The reason why I mentioned Kinoti mentioning the tax reliefs is because initially turnover tax was targeted to individuals. But when those reliefs were introduced in April last year, the base was expanded to include not just individuals, but partnerships and even companies, incorporated companies. And on top of that, the threshold was increased from 500,000 to 1 million and up till 50 million. And so we have more companies or more businesses, because even individuals and partnerships still qualify, that can actually benefit from turnover tax. The other thing that we've done, which also lends to the idea, the misconception that you mentioned that SMEs have of KRA and mostly of regulators, is that they are an obstacle to growth. And that is not the case. I think we can all appreciate that governments require revenue, which is why we have taxation. But KRA has introduced a 3-year program starting January 2021, which is a voluntary tax disclosure program. And what that program does is that it allows you to declare any previously undeclared taxes and get a remission on any interest and penalties associated with that tax, as long as that income was earned from between 1st July 2015 and 30th June 2020. And so KRA does believe it's second chances. We are not of the opinion that it should be so punitive, for example, for somebody to become voluntarily tax compliant, which is what the voluntary tax disclosure program does. And it's a 3-year program. As I said, if you actually register in the first year, you declare the tax, you make the application and declare the taxes, then you get a 100% remission of the interest and penalties. Those of you who may have had obligations like VAT and pay as you earn are actually aware that 5 years of taxes, penalties relating to a tax is actually a significant debt. And then if you make the application and the payment in the second year, you get 50% remission. And then finally, in the third year, you get a 25% remission. I think it's Frida who said that one of her favorite books is, How People Perish for Lack of Knowledge. That same book says that the truth will set you free. That is the one condition for the voluntary tax disclosure program. Declare truthfully. Because, if you don't declare truthfully, then the commissioner may actually rescind that remission that you have received. And so you can see that KRA is actually interested in to be voluntarily compliant, because whatever tax you declare under the voluntary tax disclosure program, then the commissioner cannot pursue that tax under another law and proceed to prosecute, as long as you have declared truthfully. The tax, of course, cannot be a tax that is already under audit. KRA cannot establish that this tax is due, and then you say, I want to now voluntarily declare those taxes you have already discovered. So we are actually interested in engaging with SMEs, with sharing information, letting them know that there's actually, they have been recognized as a tax base, that efforts have been made to create a simplified regime for them, that effort extends even beyond just the creation of the regime, but even the offering of options to declare and to pay that tax, that tax that is targeted to SMEs.
Thank you so much, Susan, for that very clear, presentation on what the Revenue Authority is doing. And I think one of the key things that are coming out really is the issue of awareness. How much do we or do SMEs know about what the Revenue Authority is doing, and also what are the opportunities for further engagement. But we will come back to that in terms of further engagement with SMEs. So Mercy, I'd quickly like to go to you and maybe share with us some of the most exciting things that SMEs are doing in Kenya on your platforms, and how this compares to what SMEs are doing in other regions, of course, with specific reference to Kenya.
Rosemary, unfortunately, I think Mercy has dropped off. We're trying to get her reconnected. So maybe you can engage, and Mwende from CAK has just joined in, so maybe you can pick that up.
Oh, okay, she's back. She had, Mwende, welcome back. I know you had connectivity issues. Good to have you back on. So I think we'll start with Mwende and then maybe pick up with Mercy once she's able to jump back in. Mwende, the government has committed through the Communications Authority of Kenya to make it easier for Kenyans to engage in online trade, both nationally and internationally. Please share with us what this means for SMEs. And again here, what are the practical solutions that you're making available to them in terms of engaging in online trade and pursuing business opportunities? Mwende.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Apologies for connectivity. Actually, not connectivity, but indeed power problems. So I will speak very fast before I go off. But what I would say, the Communications Authority of Kenya regulates a number of sectors. And the sectors that we regulate are telecommunications, radio communications, i.e., broadcasting, and also we regulate an important sector for you, which is postal and telecommunications, which most people do not know. For any business to be online, you have to have very clear logistical channels to, deliver your goods. So that is also another issue that we regulate. Another area that we regulate is e-commerce. We are not quite strong on that, but what we have put in place is a cyber security response center, so that in the event that we have issues on cyber security, we are able to respond to that and also support the users of the online platforms to use them securely. So as I had said when I was invited for this, is that I will be looking to hear from you, and I was taking notes, and some of the notes that I took were one, the idea of talking to government, and talking to government can be in many ways, and I think one of the issues that was raised was having an association. Many other sectors do have associations. I'm sure some of you who are in ICT are in KIPTANET, the Kenya ICT Network. So I won't talk much. I'm about to go off. I'm at 3% on my computer, but I'll be listening in to you and waiting to hear what we can do to help you. I think that's the idea. And I do not like it said that, say that the doors are open. No, it's actually quite easy. All our information, because another one that was raised was having data available to you. And indeed, we do publish quarterly reports on how many subscribers are there, what is the coverage in terms of telecommunications and broadband. That report is available on our website on a quarterly basis. But as I said, I will listen. I would have talked more, but let me listen and hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mwende, and we'll definitely come back to you, especially if we pick up any questions from the audience. I'd like to then go back to Susan, if you don't mind, because quite a bit of the issues that came up both in the earlier sessions as well as this session, really pointing towards the burdensome regime that we have in terms of the tax regime. So one issue, the disconnect between policy and tax administration. And I was just wondering if we, and also just the issue of, the lack of awareness. I'm sure a lot of us are hearing some of the things you're talking about today for the first time. For example, the opportunities to engage during the voluntary tax declaration.
Disclosure program. Uh-huh.
Yes, sorry. So I think maybe talk a little bit around how we can increase public engagement. I mean, or rather, policy engagement around SME inclusive policies, both from the policy design perspective, implementation, as well as, the tax administration itself. How do we ensure that engagement is sustained, and what are the measures that you're putting in place to ensure that we have a think small approach in terms of how we design policy around tax administration?
Okay, so I'd like to begin with the first question, which was the question of awareness to certain, not just issues of tax, but also issues such as the voluntary tax disclosure program and the like. And in fact, I actually want to draw the attention of, the audience to the poll that we have. We currently are running a poll just for us to get feedback regarding whether you are aware of the voluntary tax disclosure program, the turnover tax program, and the like, and how you would like KRA to communicate with you. So KRA has actually been making efforts since the establishment of this office, this Taxpayer Services and MSMEs division, very conscious efforts to engage with SMEs, and especially those who have come together in associations. We, for example, work in close contact with the SME advisory in the OP to be able to reach SMEs, so that because that is one way that we are able to not just train one taxpayer, but also train taxpayers as a group, which also helps to highlight what are the sector issues, what issues are specific to this sector, and how can we bridge that gap, whether that gap is a knowledge gap, or whether that gap is one in accessing how those taxpayers access our services. And so those are the efforts that we are making, is to reach out to taxpayers, SMEs especially, in associations. And I actually do want to encourage the SMEs that are here to go through associations and approach us specifically with their requests to have sensitizations, because you can actually get together as industry specific. I think it's maybe June Gashwi who mentioned in the last panel that it seems people are aware that there is that taxpayers are grouped in industries, and so if you want to get together as SMEs under a certain industry, and then approach us. You can email KRA seminar, for example, at kra.go.ke and say, we are this business association or SME association, and we want a sensitization on these issues. These are the compliance concerns that have been identified by the SMEs in this sector. And, we are requesting for you to organize a webinar or an in-person training. We actually are conducting webinars now because of the situation being as it is.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. So one last question, and welcome back, Mercy. Before I get to Mercy.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a question from the audience. Al-Murim is asking, what are the applicable taxes for Airbnbs and online businesses in Kenya at the moment? I'm not sure if you have that information on hand with you, but if you could maybe briefly share, and then we can move on with Mercy.
Okay, sure, I can. So an Airbnb is every business has to pay an income tax. So an Airbnb, if it falls within that bracket that I mentioned, can actually register for turnover tax, because the businesses that are exempt from turnover tax are, for example, rental income. It's actually incomes that are exempt from turnover tax. Rental income, for example, is exempt from turnover tax because it is taxed under the monthly rental income tax regime. Employment income, you cannot be paid your employment income and then subject it to turnover tax because it has already been subjected to pay as you earn. Professional services, because those professional services are subject to a withholding fee at 5%, and so they cannot qualify for turnover tax because we've already mentioned that the rate is 1%. So having said that, pay as you earn. So another one of the incentives that still persists even today is the increase of the lower threshold for pay as you earn. Pay as you earn, actually, the lower threshold is 24,000, which means that if you are paid a salary and the amount is less than 24,000, then you have no pay as you want to pay. When then that follows that if you're actually paying somebody as an Airbnb owner and their employment income falls, above 24,000, then you should pay as you want for them. The third one is VAT. Sorry. So VAT has a threshold, and I think maybe one issue that perplexes a lot of SMEs is that sometimes you are registering a business and you will just register it perhaps without approaching, let's say, a KRA office to advise you that there is a threshold for registration for VAT. You can register voluntarily, but if your turnover is 5 million or more a year, then you should register for VAT. You are required. And so, of course, if you are earning more than 5 million in a year, in any 12-month period, you should register for VAT if you are an Airbnb.
Thanks so much. I think to you now, Mercy, and I think picking up on where Nanayaa had left us in terms of the research that Facebook had undertaken on how SMEs are engaging with the platform. I'd just like you to maybe get a little bit deeper in terms of sharing with us some of the most exciting things that SMEs are doing in Kenya on your platforms, and how this compares to what SMEs are doing in other regions. Karibu, Mercy. Go ahead, Mercy.
Sorry, would you please repeat the question? I was just trying to tell Nekesa that I can't hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, so we're just picking up from where Nanayaa had left on the research.
Okay.
On how SMEs are engaging with the platform. And I was essentially asking you to maybe go a little bit deeper and share with us what some of the most exciting things that SMEs are doing in Kenya on your platforms, yeah, and how this compares to what SMEs are doing in other regions as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that question, and apologies for the digital, let me say, tech challenges that I'm having this afternoon. For some strange reason, I've been online the whole time without a problem until power went off a minute ago and everything went off with it. I think these are some of the struggles that SMEs are having, to be honest, and especially those who are working from home or are operating in very small scale sort of like outfits. They have to deal with these kinds of challenges when we have them. But to the point that the question you've asked, I think some of the ones that call out are basically around the issue of women and then how they use business, how they're doing business and leveraging on digital, as well as the issue about the youth population. I think you heard that Nanayaa said that by 2025, a quarter of the world's population will be youth in Africa. Which is a very significant step, and I see that as a huge opportunity for businesses, especially that are thinking in terms of where to invest, who to work with, and so on. That the future is the youth, and we have to actually consider that. On the point of women, because I think I just skimmed over that quickly. I think for us, one of the things that stood out in this research was the fact that a lot of women, once they are using digital, the issue of them falling off at the end because of ownership, and that is something that I think is really critical for those who are involved in gender, considering gender-related issues and the issues that are affecting accessibility and affordability of digital devices and tools and services, to address that aspect specifically around how to empower and allow more women to be able to leverage these tools to be able to build alongside men in this economy, in the economy that we are in. And I think the last thing I'd bring out is the issue of sectors. I think you heard from Nanayaa mention the issue of a lot of the service-oriented sectors are the ones that tend to be leveraging digital a lot. We're not seeing that as much in the traditional sectors like agriculture, mining, and so on. And that obviously is a concern, especially when I think about a country like Kenya, where agriculture is predominantly a really huge part of the economy, alongside tourism, for example. But to think that a lot of livelihoods in Kenya are supported by the agricultural sector, whether it is from a small-scale perspective or all the way to large-scale, that agriculture is a really huge part of our livelihoods. And the need for such sectors such as that, I think, to take up digital is really important. And to see that in the statistics that we're seeing from the research, that there's a falling back of those sectors in trying to adopt technology, again, for me, presents an opportunity that I think both policymakers and as well as private sector could look into supporting and investing in those areas. Because, again, I think if you think about agriculture, there is a lot of opportunities there to market oneself, to make sure that you reach markets previously you had no access to think about how you can expand your reach and scope and build awareness around products, and joining even groups that will enlighten you about farming techniques that are new, that are different, that have been adopted elsewhere. And all of this would only happen if you're able to use leverage digital tools and come online. So I think some of those I would call out as some of the exciting, I think, opportunities that I'd like to position them that should be considered. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Mercy. So I think, I think maybe to conclude and ending on that high note, Mercy, on the opportunities and some of the ways in which SMEs are engaging. Maybe by way of wrapping up, we can quickly engage around the topmost, the two top things that we think policymakers need to be engaging around. So I know you, Mercy, for example, being somebody within your organization who's constantly thinking about public policy and engagement. So it would be interesting to hear from you just, what should be top of mind for policymakers moving forward within this new dispensation. We have got COVID, there's so much dynamism, there's the youth bulge, all these things that we've talked about, including the opportunities that digital is presenting. What should be top of mind for policymakers? And then to you, Susan, also by way of wrapping up, I think you've shared with us, what it looks like in terms of you recognizing SMEs as a resource, as a tax base, and that thinking is there. But what I want probably to hear from you by way of wrapping up is what are the areas of what are the opportunities for improvement moving forward? I know you've shared quite a bit in terms of what you're doing around engagement, but how can we improve given everything that we've had in the morning? There's always room for improvement. So it would be interesting to hear from you on that as well. Then I'll hand over to Amani for the last word. So Marcy, maybe start with you, and then we wrap up with Susan, and then back to Amani.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. So I have a lot of policy asks for us to make them, but I will not go directly in that fashion. But to answer your question, I think, one, we need to recognize that we are in unprecedented times. And I think as humanity, this has been the reality, especially in the last year and a half or two, because of the pandemic. And there has been a clear disruption to businesses if you think about how that pandemic has affected now the small and medium-sized enterprises and businesses that, again, support a huge part of the population, not just in Kenya, but also in the continent at large. And the fact that a lot of people have made a shift to online connectivity and leveraging these digital tools to be able to stay open, to be able to continue connecting with their customers and expanding their reach, even within the circumstances that they're dealing with that are really difficult, of having to scale down their businesses to accommodate the sinking or dropping revenues, etc. I think there's many policy asks that could be made out of that. What I will say, though, as an organization, for us as a company, we have taken a lot of deliberate measures to make sure that we make it a lot easier for those who are thinking about leveraging digital tools to pivot online. By supporting, for example, local partner organizations like Wild, like Sandbox and others who are thinking around solving problems that are affecting the SME sector. Partnering with them, for example, to launch courses like Boost with Facebook that are free and available and are available online to help businesses pick up the skills they need on how to then leverage these digital tools. Because we are hearing a lot of businesses saying, I would like to continue doing my business, but I don't know how to use these online tools. And so for us, wanting to be part of supporting in giving them, skilling them with those kinds of things so they can improve their digital presence, they can be able to reach new markets, like I said, and continue even being in business is really critical. That's one thing. So I think supporting local businesses in terms of skills is one, and I think whatever policy interventions can come from that angle is really important. But the second thing is, I think it would be helpful to have policies that enable businesses to be able to bounce back. So obviously, looking in the area of taxation, we've had quite a number of examples, and in fact, in the research that was presented earlier, we had businesses saying that there's a struggle in being able to keep up with business when you have additional taxes during this time that you're already struggling. I think looking into some of those areas, of course, it is really important for government to continue to collect revenues because that's important. It's part of the role of government, but also to make sure that we are applying broad taxes that would allow for businesses to be able to not specific to hitting businesses, let me put it that way. Not sector-specific taxation, but broad-based taxation that would allow for the burden to be shared amongst a wider audience as opposed to targeting businesses directly, especially. Again, of course, there is the question of I think, allowing for businesses to be able to go beyond the borders. If you think about our customer base, where you look at the population as the potential customer base for most businesses, a population of approximately 15 million is small if you're thinking about competing alongside others and being able to make the most of that. I think it was Julie who was speaking earlier about, for example, content creators who are people who are probably in entertainment as an example. I think if you produce the song and only targeted Kenyan population to make a living out of that, it might be difficult. And being able to break the barriers of borders and so on is really critical. And I think being able to have policies that enable integration, enable for businesses to be able to scale outside of the specific jurisdictions where people belong will be really key. It was at the beginning of this session that I heard Amani saying that the world is becoming flat. And are we flat enough for ourselves as a country? We have to ask ourselves, do we have barriers that are making us stand out in terms of creating mountains that will stop us from being as flat as can be when it comes to digital, for example. And so some of those, I think, would be the areas I would emphasize for us to think about when talking from a policy perspective. In addition to that, I think partnerships are really, really critical. And it's partnerships locally, but also partnerships outside of our borders. So if you think about, for example, what Facebook is doing when we create tools like Marketplace, where anyone just by having a phone or access to the internet can be able to go online today and buy and sell goods on Marketplace, and it's free and can do this to anyone sitting anywhere in the world. These kinds of things have to be, I think, would be great if they were modeled even for other sectors within the economy, that there should be nothing that stops people from being able to do this across. We do this effectively when we are able to have groups, for example, online. If you belong to groups, you've seen people throwing in ideas, whether it's in construction, in home decoration, in cooking, in whatever it is that people may be into. We had the example earlier from Nanayaa of Lux Nails Parlor, who are leveraging these digital tools. How can we make sure that we create support groups or Facebook groups or other forms of groups that allow for infiltration or exchange or cross-pollination of ideas, allows for people to network and build the skills and networks that they might need to be able to penetrate new markets and so on and so forth. So integrating, integrating boundaries or removing the boundaries really, really helps to be able to achieve all of that. In my last remarks, I think I'd like to flag the fact that there is also a lot of struggle, I think, for most businesses in terms of capital and making sure that we support businesses in reducing the costs of what they are incurring. I think that I mentioned tax as one, but if you think about other things like affordability of services that are businesses are reliant on to be able to go digital, for instance. So when you think about affordability of internet services, affordability of advertising, affordability of tools that businesses would need to be able to do better, would be really, I think, a huge part of it. Capital, obviously, in itself is a separate issue. And I think if we open the borders and have more of investment coming in or supporting locals that want to invest in businesses and creating those spaces that can allow for that to happen would be a great thing. But individually, even in the private sector, thinking about how to make these costs lower for businesses. So like I said, for example, making it affordable for businesses to use digital tools without spending too much money would be great. Like, in terms of affordable services, etc. As Facebook, we invest significantly, for example, in connectivity, in collaboration with mobile partners on the ground to make sure that we can provide access to internet at a rate that is much, much more affordable. Initiatives like this can be taken by different sector players within the private sector, and that can help alleviate the problems that and challenges that businesses are seeing today. And I think I'll stop there. And before I forget, Rosemary, today is Africa Day. And so I think we forgot in all of this to say Happy Africa Day to everyone. And I'd like to take that moment to also say that.
Indeed, Mercy, Happy Africa Day. And thanks for that apt reminder. So Susan, picking up on what Mercy has just said, you talked about affordability, simplification, integration, thinking around scale. How do we make it more affordable for SMEs to engage? Building on partnerships and building more opportunities, not only to discover, but also to learn, share, and grow. So, Susan, I think
yes,
it's your turn.
It's my turn. So my clarion call would just be to encourage SMEs. Please don't let this opportunity to benefit from the voluntary tax disclosure program go. I think this is one great opportunity. I certainly have not seen one that encompasses so many tax heads, because you can actually not just declare income taxes, but VAT, pay-as-you-earn, capital gains tax. There are so many tax heads that are covered under this, and it is a great opportunity to actually reduce the cost of compliance, because you will be issued with a certificate after this, and that demonstrates that you took advantage of the program. and therefore, the commissioner cannot pursue those taxes under any other law. The other thing I would like to say also is to encourage SMEs, especially when they are starting off, to when you are going through that registration process, to kindly present yourself to a KRA office and just let them know this is what we are doing, this is the size that we are, because many SMEs, for instance, don't register for turnover tax, but rather might register for the income tax annual regime because they are not aware that it benefits them. They might have been aware of it when it was only limited to individuals, but the expansion of the scope to include even limited companies and partnerships means that more SMEs, especially in the starting years when they can benefit most from that reduced tax rate, from that reduced need to keep complex records, can benefit from that, then might miss on that opportunity. So I say don't be afraid to approach KRA offices even just to make that inquiry. I have seen a lot of comments regarding the need for KRA to engage SMEs, and we take that as a challenge, and I encourage SMEs, for instance, to reach out to us through the email that I gave, but also to let us know when how we can best reach groups of SMEs to be able to communicate with regard to taxes, what taxes are suitable or applicable for them.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Mercy, for making the time and for sharing with us. And I think one of the most important things we're taking from this is the need for continuous engagement. And therefore that makes the point about forums such as this. So thank you so much. I'd now like to turn it back over to Amani.
All right, thank you very much, Rosemary, for a job well done. Thank you, Susan, for that very informative session. Thank you for sharing that information with us. And happy Africa Day to you too, Susan. Happy Africa Day to you, Mercy. And we noticed the choker, Mercy, the African choker. We noticed it and it looks fantastic. And happy Africa Day to you. Thank you for all the information that you gave us about Facebook as well. I'll allow you to leave, and you can go backstage. And please take a chance to look at the questions and the discussion area and the Q&A. I think there's some things you'll find engaging. We have come to the end of day one. What a day! What a session! And I hope this has been valuable for you. If it has, I'd like to hear you say it. I'd like to see you say it in the discussions section. I would have wanted to hear a lot of feedback today, but we've really run out of time. And so I will pick up some of that feedback tomorrow. However,